Everything felt like a coincidence. That evening, my husband left for his business trip, looking as tired as he usually did. Just a few hours earlier, he looked at me with that smile and said, "I love you," before heading out. Everything seemed normal, but tonight would be different. I could feel it. As the night wore on, Halil, my stepson, passed through the living room. As always, he seemed a bit lost, grappling with emotions, a young man still growing. I slowly walked over to him, and we started to talk. The more we talked, the more at ease I felt. Maybe I was looking for that lost connection. Then there was a knock at the door. I froze for a moment, and when I opened it, there was Emre holding flowers. What was I doing? What had happened? These questions echoed in my mind as I invited him in. For a few minutes, we just looked at each other in silence. No words were exchanged, yet everything was so clear. In that moment, nothing else mattered. It was one of those rare instances where we both found comfort in the emptiness within us. As Emre took another step forward, time seemed to slow down. We slowly moved closer to each other. In that moment, I didn't have the chance to think about right or wrong. I was just living in the moment. My eyes were lost in his. While everything in my mind was so hazy, every part of my body was being drawn toward him. A voice inside me told me not to do this, to pull away, but somehow I couldn't stop myself. One more step. For a moment, there was such a profound silence that only our breaths could be heard. In that instant, I moved forward without thinking about what might come next. My body, my heart, my soul were entirely in that moment. The absence of my husband, the closeness of Halil, such contrasting feelings. They all blended together. After a while, there was a faint knock at the door. Halil gave me a look that let me know he had noticed Emre. He watched me with questions and a hint of surprise in his eyes. But at that moment, none of us intended to turn back, and we completed the night in a way that words cannot capture. Time suddenly stopped. Emre's eyes shone in the darkness of the room, like a light. That look reminded me that anything was possible, that we were in an unexpected moment. He took off his jacket and stepped onto the rug spread on the floor. That movement felt like a signal that the night was beginning. My emotions were mixed yet somehow clear. In that moment, I was only after one thing, finding what I'd been missing. Echoes of my husband leaving earlier lingered in my mind, but those thoughts quickly faded. At that moment, it was just Emre. With each step, his body drew closer to mine. He moved slowly, his hands gently grasping my neck. I felt the warmth of his touch. Each touch on my skin made me feel more vulnerable. Emre's lips brushed softly against the side of my face. The hesitation in my eyes disappeared. For a while, there was silence. We could only feel each other's presence. In that moment, there were only breaths and heartbeats. Such an intense closeness, drawn to each other at such an unexpected time. I took a deep breath, my eyes closed. Everything was overwhelmingly intense right then and there. One more step. As Emery's body started to merge with mine, everything began to flow together. Slowly, yet deliberately, we drew closer, touching each other more deeply. For a moment, it felt like everything was just the two of us. There was a deep calm, yet the storm inside me was so powerful that it was impossible to describe my feelings with a single word. Just then, there was another knock at the door. In that moment, I hesitated briefly, an inner voice mixed with doubt stirring inside me. But then I saw Halil. There was no trace of uncertainty on my stepson's face. As he stepped toward me, his eyes fixed on me, whispering something under his breath. I continued without pause in his presence. As I felt Emre drawing closer, the intensity in Halil's eyes never wavered. At that moment, the boundaries between us had melted away. There was no right or wrong. Halil silently withdrew, but his gaze lingered. A faint hum echoed in my mind as a rush of feelings warmed my body, and together we slipped into the night. This feeling had no name, only desire. My body and soul were moving closer with each breath. As the night wore on, Halil's presence receded into the background, while Emery's hands entwined more deeply with mine. Gently, he held me from behind, guiding me toward the window. As he slowly turned off the lights, the only sounds left in the room were our breaths. When our bodies united, the shadows on the wall seemed to tell a story of their own. With each embrace, every fading thought was replaced by a new sensation. At the end of the night, warmth enveloped every inch of my body. As Emre's form melted into mine, everything in my mind blurred into a haze. But one thing was clear: this night would remain an unforgettable memory